Yeah. Holy smokes, I'm no joke out the bullpen. Bringing nothing but heat, leave you hanging like clothespins. He's a beast when he goes in, ice cold frozen. The first round draft pick, #1 chosen. Drop bombs, explosion, I'm self-promotion. And I keep shit moving like a flanker in motion. I'm the #1 spokesman, is my devotion. That I'm dedicated to the rhyme is my own notion. Brown water's the potion, it put hair on your chest. Or you can put one in the air and it'll put you to rest. Sweet dreams, I'm about to fade. I got my mind on my money and I'm dreaming about getting this all paid. Mr. Go-Getter, Mr. Assertive, Mr. Initiative, Mr. Results, man, I'm all about my business, kid. Damn.
Shark, you muted. There we go.
Suddenly not so casual Sunday morning in November. It is NFL Week 9, November 5th, 2023. Circa Millions, the show, the Shark and the Gun, right here live on Sharky Waters Nation X, Twitter. Come on over to YouTube, join the chat. A lot going on this morning. Kansas City currently at work in Germany. We're working right now on this beautiful Sunday morning. Guns Picks, what's going on?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird. I'm sweating a 3-unit play. First 3-unit play I put in the NFL this week with the Kansas City Chiefs at -2.5. We're looking okay right now, 7-0. But listen, we're here to break down the rest of the slate here on this beautiful Saturday morning, Week 9 edition of the NFL. I'm ready. I cooked up a good card of 4 plays, and I'm ready to share them with the people. Let's do it.
Absolutely not waiting around. 1 o'clock, 12 Central, NRG Stadium, Houston, Texas. Texans come home off a fairly egregious loss, if you will. The first win of Bryce Young's career last week in Carolina. They come home and they catch the Bucs in a rough spot. An official from the Gun, a collaboration, and tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, glove Houston. Perfect spot for them and a perfect face spot here for Tampa. Listen, Tampa coming in and do this game, three-game losing streak off the loss in Thursday Night Football versus the Buffalo Bills, 24-18, losing the net yardage battle there, -125 net yards average. They are 3-4 straight up for the season and 4-3 ATS in that regard. Now you got to look at Houston, 3-4 straight up, 4-3 ATS as well. And they're coming off a road loss, bad road loss by arguably the worst team in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers, losing by a field goal. Plus 5 net yard average, -1 turnover ratio in that game. Now Houston struggles on the road. That's historical. We have the data to show that, especially outside of the division. But when they play at home, whole different story. They're plus 6-point differential, plus 43 net yard average at home this season overall. This is Houston's 4th straight game versus an NFC South opponent, by the way. I don't know who does the scheduling, but I mean, it looks like they're playing inside the division there in the South. 1-2 straight up, 2-1 ATS in their first 3 games versus the NFC South. But in those spots, losing the road games by 2 points apiece, but they won the home game 20-13 versus one of the better teams in the NFC South in the New Orleans Saints. Now you have Houston. What do? They want to pass the ball. They're a great passing team, very one-dimensional in that regard. 7.6 yards per play, ranked 6th in the NFL. Passing game, 60.5% pass completion rate. CJ Stroud has got 9 touchdowns, 1 INT, so he's not turning over the ball. One of the best rookies in the league. Now you got Tampa, absolutely gashed in the passing game this season. 300-plus yards to 3 out of their 7 opponents this season, giving up 6.9 yards per play, which is ranked 25th in the league in that category. Then you got to look at how these guys do versus non-divisional opponents. Houston exceptionally well, plus 2-point differential, -7 net yard average, +1 turnover ratio. On the other side with Tampa, -5-point differential, -96 net yard average, +1 turnover ratio versus non-divisional opponents. Also, you got to look at Tampa, not done well facing opponents outside of the conference. They are 1-5 ATS versus AFC opponents dating back to 2022. Houston has done well off of losses too, if you want to go check that out. They beat awful loss. They beat Jacksonville 37-17, and they beat the Saints 20-13 off losses this season. I think this is a perfect spot for Houston to bounce back. You got crushed. You're shattered on the road versus the worst team on their first win of the season, the Carolina Panthers. I think they come and get right in this spot versus a Tampa team that, quite frankly, doesn't play well on the road versus AFC opponents. So give me Houston here, -2.5, 2-unit special.
Completely agreed, and let's jump off it. One of the things that I really love about professional football is what I like to call pattern recognition. And what it means is situational analysis, home and road versus specific opponent types. And the Texans fall into a beautiful, transparent point of pattern recognition. This team is 0-3 straight up, 1-2 ATS on the road outside of the division. In week 1, they got hammered at Baltimore. First career start for CJ Stroud, classy Baltimore. Let it be what it is, 25-9. More specifically, week 5 and week 8 at the NFC South, both as a short dog or favorite right in the field goal range. I love to say it, almost the same game. Mirror zone at Atlanta, 21-19, lost by 2 points. Walk-off field goal at the buzzer by Atlanta. Last week, as you mentioned, 15-13 loss. Walk-off field goal, Eddie Pinheiro, and the Carolina Panthers, their first win. Point is, they do the same thing every time. What do they do at home outside of the division? By far their best football. Crucial corollary versus Pittsburgh in week 4. Pittsburgh was in a very similar spot to where Tampa Bay is today. Road, back-to-back sequence off a cover the previous week where statistically they weren't supposed to cover. Last week, Tampa Bay luck boxed a cover on a final drive in Buffalo on Thursday night. Couple penalties on fourth down 25-yard catch by Mike Evans. Point is, when Houston got Pittsburgh at home, it was a very, very similar spot to where Tampa Bay is today. Let's talk about Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is 3-0 ATS on the road. This is not a very good Tampa Bay team. They should not be 3-0 ATS on the road. And if you go through those games, both outside of the division covers, statistical anomalies. Week 1 at Minnesota, 20-17 cover plus 5.5. Kirk Cousins, 3 turnovers. Minnesota outgained them in that game, 369-242. Bottom line, the box score pointed to Minnesota. Tampa Bay outliered the game to cover and win. At New Orleans, a couple weeks later in the division, 26-9 win. Key point there. Derek Carr coming back from an injury. Divisional game, totally different environment. And as I mentioned last week, just a really egregious backdoor cover. Tampa Bay only has 3 wins on the campaign against Minnesota, the outlier. Chicago, the worst team in the sport at that point in time, and probably still today. And the game against New Orleans in the division. Also, if you look at where Tampa Bay is on their schedule, I have this written down. This is the end of a gauntlet. And what I mean by that is sometimes people will see that they're on a 3-game losing streak and think that they need to bounce back because they've lost a few in a row. I totally disagree with that notion. Hammered by Detroit at home, key point. Physical, defensive football, 20-6. Coin flip loss in the division, low scoring, 16-13 against Atlanta, key point. Physical, bloodbath. Last week at Buffalo, 24-18. Physical, bloodbath. 2 out of the last 3 weeks, you're playing deep playoff caliber teams. You've gotten your ass kicked 3 weeks in a row. Doesn't matter if you lost those games, you competed. And now you're going to be flat. Houston's going to be pissed off. This is where they function great. We love this play. Houston minus 2.5, 1 unit official. Staying at 1 o'clock, my next play. Let's talk about the Saints. The Saints have gotten steamed from 7 to 9.5. That is for good reason. And let's talk about statistics and let's talk about the psychology of this matchup. The Saints started the campaign 1-5-1 ATS, and we've been buying them week after week, and they have burned us a couple times. But the point and the beauty of this is that this is an 18-week calendar that goes until January of 2024. So when a team continues to outlier you, you don't run it high. You stay the course of action. And what did they do last week? They paid us back with emphasis. 38-27 win on the road. I think it continues here today against a Chicago team, frankly, with Tyson Bagent, who is really, really poor. You saw it last week, a game at the Chargers, uncompetitive, ultimately. 30-13 Chargers. This is the second time this year they're catching a huge line on the road like this. Both were blowouts. 41-10 at KC, 30-13 at the Chargers. Couple more points on this game. New Orleans is 0-3 ATS at home. Notice we just said Tampa Bay's 3-0 ATS on the road egregiously, so we're going to fade. New Orleans is 0-3 at home ATS egregiously, so we're going to buy. And all of those non-covers were pretty ridiculous. Week 1 against Tennessee, 16-15 backdoor. Game against Jacksonville, 24-24, end of the fourth quarter, touchdown. New Orleans, in my opinion, could close this campaign 7-2 straight up. And if you look at their schedule, they have one of the softest schedules in the league the next 9 or 10 weeks. Chicago, Minnesota, Atlanta twice, Carolina, the Giants, the Rams, the Bucks. And they have one game against Detroit. The only team that they play in the next 10 weeks that is currently in the playoff race is Detroit. New Orleans is going to go on a heater starting today. Actually, it started last week. Buy this at 9.5. We got it at 7 because we obviously want to get the best. This has blowout written all over it. 1 unit official, -7, -9.5. Go to the gun at 4 o'clock. A lot of moving parts on today's card. A lot of backup quarterbacks, coaching changes, all sorts of stuff going on here. It really is the intrigue and fascination of NFL football week to week as teams are really in turmoil across the league. Nonetheless, the gun is buying the Giants on the road. Daniel Jones returns here today and a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really part of the cap. I hopefully Jones does show up and doesn't do Mr. Daniel Dimes interception style, bringing this team down. But I think the Giants are in the perfect spot here, and this is the team that is on the rise, especially on the defensive end. I'll get to that in a second. But look where the Giants are coming from. They're 2-6 straight up, 2-5-1 ATS off a close loss last week. We had the Giants at +3. Couldn't get the cover. A lot of mistakes in that one. Probably should have won that game. Versus the Jets. Lost it 13-10, despite with a -57 net yard average, +2 turnover ratios for that game. Now you got to look at where the Raiders are coming from. They're 3-5 straight up NATS. They're coming off a brutal Monday night loss that cost, quite frankly, a lot of people their jobs, including the head coach, OC, and GM. Losing to Detroit 26-14, getting dominated in the yardage battle, -329 net yards. That's right. -329 net yards for a professional football team. That is bad. Now you got to look at the Raiders. Going into this with a new quarterback on this one, they benched Jimmy G. They're putting in Aiden O'Connell. So Aiden O'Connell's actually had one start this season, so we have a little bit of data. He did start versus the Chargers. 61.5% pass completion rate, 6.1 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 1 INT, and a 24-17 loss. Not bad stats overall, but look who they're going against. They were going against the worst passing defense in the NFL, the Chargers, and you put up egregious numbers, in my opinion, because you should have really smoked them if you were a seasoned quarterback. Then you have the Giants. They've been pretty bad all season, but in their last 3 games, you've seen them improve, right? In the Buffalo game, Washington, and the Jets, they have won the yardage battle and were plus in the turnover ratio in 2 out of the 3 of those games. They also held their opponents to under 300 yards of total offense in all 3 of those spots. So you're seeing this team defensively coming into their own, playing exceptionally well, and I think they're going to do it versus this team that's in shambles in the Raiders. Now, the Raiders' their offense is not very good. They're ranked 31st in total offense, 28th in yards per play, 31st in turnover ratio. And then you have the Raiders going in through a massive house cleaning. No McDaniels anymore, no OC, no GM. So they're going to be doing interns or guys that are just going to step up into the role and do the play calling. Not the key situation here for the Raiders, in my opinion. Also, you got to look at the Giants 6-1-1 ATS versus non-conference opponents dating back to 2022. I think the Giants get it done here. They get that win. I think they're playing exceptionally well, especially the last 3 weeks, and I think they're going to get it done here versus the Raiders that are in absolute shambles in Allegiant Stadium today. Give me the Giants +2 2-unit special.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts in this game here, 425. I think this is clearly not the game that people had expected, excuse me, going back early season when this game was scheduled. Obviously, Josh McDaniels out. Insert Antonio Pierce, and I think that's a very interesting storyline. Ex-New York Giants linebacker Antonio Pierce facing his old team with Aiden O'Connell. As you mentioned, Aiden O'Connell push or hook, depending on the line you got at the Chargers. Hard to read there. A lot of moving parts. I don't know what to make of this game. The gun on the Giants. Going back to 1 o'clock, my next official, we're going up to Foxborough. We're going to the road side of this game. And we're taking the Commanders at +3, 1-unit official. This is a very similar cap to the Houston cap. Pattern recognition. And I think another specific point about pattern recognition is it applies to these young quarterbacks home to road very, very closely because young quarterbacks are a little bit more insecure, if you will. So when they start to get into a flow in a certain environment, it sustains. And you see where Washington has performed their best ball this year. It's been on the road by far. This team is a far better road team. This team is 0-3 ATS home outside of division. Just complete garbage. Didn't cover as a favorite against Arizona. Got blown out by Buffalo, 37-3. Blown out by Chicago, 40-20. Again, we had correctly in Week 5 Thursday Night Football. But if you go to the other side of this, 2-0 road outside of the division. Week 2 at Denver, 35-33 win as a small dog, +4 key point there at the AFC. That was their only out-of-conference game on the road this year. They did cover and win on a similar number to today. And Week 6 at Atlanta, 24-16 as a dog as well. This is their beautiful environment. They're 3-0 ATS, road off a home loss. They are coming off of a loss last week. They are 1-5 last 6 straight up. Key point, I think they're going to win the game this week. Buy this off a 1-5 against much better competition. People still want to hold on to New England. Notice I said much better competition. New England is not much better competition. In fact, New England is very poor in this environment. 0-2 home outside of the division, both versus the NFC. Non-cover Week 1 against Philadelphia, 25-20. I think even more applicable, Week 5 as a small favorite against New Orleans, 34-0 New Orleans. And if you really look a little more closely at New England, outside of just the spot-specific analysis, this is a really tough spot for them on their calendar. Last 4 weeks, at Las Vegas, home win against Buffalo, at Miami. Now they're home against Washington, which truthfully is not an inspirational opponent. And they have to go to London after tonight's game. So this is that classic trap, which Guns and I have detailed all year. The game before you go overseas is a trap spot. And you're coming off of a divisional game in Miami. You've been traveling all over the country week to week, and you get a team out of conference that is so uninspiring. Final point on this game, New England is -12 point differential inside of the division. They've been reasonably competitive inside of the division. New England is -78 points differential outside of the division. Huge, huge gap, far less efficient. I like my guy Sam Howell. I was watching him play the last few weeks. Guy throws a nice ball. I think he's going to shred this injured Patriots defense this afternoon. On this officially at +3. Going back to 4 o'clock as we keep it flowing here. Big game here, 4:25 p.m. Game of the year, if you will. I thought we had a game of the year going back and bumping the Cowboys a couple weeks ago. Did not turn out that way. Hopefully this game's a little tighter. However, the Gun does not want a tight game. He's backing the home team at -3.
Yeah, I'm loving the Eagles in this spot here. Listen, Dallas coming off a commanding home win versus the LA Rams, +107 net yards in that game. They won 43-20. You got Dallas 5-2 straight up in ATS this season. Now you have the Philadelphia Eagles coming off a road divisional win versus the aforementioned Washington Commanders, 38-31, despite losing the net yardage battle, -98 net yards. They are 7-1 straight up, 4-2 ATS this season. Now, Dallas this season excels at home. They've been dominating their teams. Lower competition for that matter, but they're still dominating. +26 net point differential, +133 net yard average at home. But on the road, different story. They have a 0-point differential, -11 net yard average away from Dallas. They're 2-2 straight up in ATS in those spots this season. Now you got to look at Philly. Philly is very balanced as far as their home and road splits go. They have a +8 point differential, +72 net yard average, and +1 turnover ratio at home this season. So they're actually playing exceptionally well at home, but they're also playing pretty well on the road as well. But you look at Philly, should be motivated in this game, and let me tell you why. It's like because their bye week is next week. You're going to leave everything out on the field. I love taking teams, especially right before their bye, not after their bye. I think it's a perfect spot here. I think Philly really comes in super motivated to beat their divisional rival. Also got to look at the history between these two teams. Basically, all you have to do is ever since 2019, all you have to do is take the home team. They're 7-1 straight up ATS. The home team is when these two teams meet, dating back to 2018. And I think this is going to be a perfect spot here. So you have Philly going into their bye next week, super high motivated. You always take the home team every time these two teams meet. It's a step up in class for Dallas, and every time they've had that step up in class, you saw what happened in the 49ers. Didn't bode so well for them. I think this is just a team that can beat low-level competition, but when it comes to guys up to their pay grade, it's a whole different story, and Philly's going to get it rocking here at home. 4:25 tonight. Give me Philly, -3. Excuse me, 2-unit special. Whoa.
And yeah, as you mentioned, last year Philadelphia did take a loss on the road, 40-34 at Dallas. I think this could be also an under. I had talked about this earlier this week. I think based on last year's most recent score, 40-34, you see this at 46.5. I think this is going to be a tighter game, and I think that the Eagles' offense has been explosive situationally, mostly against Washington. A lot of their points have been accumulated specifically in 2 games against Washington. I think it's going to be a tighter game. I think this is probably an under. Nothing official for me. Let's go back to 1 o'clock. A lot of these games this week, as I mentioned, just a lot of moving parts. I think this is one of the most intriguing weeks in a long time from the standpoint of injuries and quarterback carousel. Look no further than the Minnesota at Atlanta game. Minnesota is now starting, I believe, Jaron Hall from BYU. The gun knows more about this guy.
I do.
Atlanta is truthfully just so unregulated with the quarterback situation. If you guys remember, they pulled Marcus Mariota last year for Desmond Ridder, and they kind of did it in a weird way. If you guys watched the Netflix show, Mariota was like very disheartened. He left the team. Like they clearly didn't take care of it in a very professional way. They made him feel horrible and ostracized. And now you're seeing it again. Desmond Ridder on the bench for Taylor Heineke. And, truthfully, I think a lot of this, unfortunately, comes down to the fact these coaches are under so much pressure and there's no time within the league to win and gain process. I think Arthur Smith is afraid he's going to get fired, so he's panicking. Because in my opinion, Desmond Ridder has been a turnover machine, particularly on the road. The guy hasn't even had 1 full season. You pull him? I just think it's short-sighted. I think it's rushed. And I just don't agree with the move. Guns, any comments on this game?
It's just a weird spot here. Jaron Hall, first start, rookie coming from BYU. I wasn't impressed with him in college, let alone being in the NFL. I think he's in a real weird spot. Of course, Atlanta playing at home, got Taylor Heineke, maybe a little bit of a motivational factor in there. Heineke had some exceptional productive games with the Washington Commanders. However, I don't understand this move at all going with Hall. I know they got Dobbs. They got him in a trade before the deadline. Maybe it's just trying to get him acclimated before they throw him into the offense. Tough spot here. I don't really have a side on this one. 2 new quarterbacks and in a system that I've never seen them work in. It's a complete pass for me. Just watch the game, take notes, and maybe we got a better spot here down the road.
I agree. I think it's almost like an exhibition game. 2 new quarterbacks. Yep. The whole thing is in disarray. I think, if you guys have to put this in an office pool, you're really gambling. I think there's no angle on this game.
It feels like a preseason game. You're correct. Absolutely. It feels like you're betting preseason. Yep.
Absolutely. And staying course with the ambiguity, if you will. I can't even say the name because it's so ambiguous. But if you go to this particular game, we're looking at Cardinals at Browns, laying 12.5 points on a 38.5. Watson is back today, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
Go to Arizona. Arizona kind of reminds me of the Atlanta situation where they're juggling 3 quarterbacks. I understand Kyler Murray's been hurt, but this carousel, if you will, is just so unregulated. Josh Dobbs gets traded this week to the Vikings. And now they're talking about starting – Guns is going to love this name too.
Clayton Tune.
He plays the nice tune, that Clayton Tune. And, it's just so unbelievable, the ambiguity of this game. Word of the broadcast here, Sunday morning, November 5th. We're feeling good vibes. Sending you guys good vibes to the chat. We love you guys. Fire up. And these games get more conversational because they're so hard to figure out. But Deshaun Watson comes back. This is a blowout line. We've talked about this numerous times. When you see the big line, the 12.5, it's never really a value on the dog type of line in NFL specifically. It just purely speaks to a talent gap and discrepancy. I don't really have much here, but Guns, what do you think of this one?
I mean, this week is basically the G5 Hall of Fame. I mean, all these quarterbacks you'll recognize from these colleges. I mean, look at the Rams. They're going to be starting Rippon today. Rippon's from Boise State. You got you got Clayton Tune from Houston. I mean, you got Aiden O'Connell coming from Purdue. I mean, you got these guys, Jaron Hall from BYU. I mean, I don't know. I mean, unless they're playing, I don't know, Southern Miss, or they're playing like some other college team. Maybe I have a cap analysis on this, but I don't have any data on these guys, so I can't pick these games. Arizona is just basically, to me, giving up. They're just in tank mode right now. Maybe looking for a new quarterback. I don't know if Murray's the guy for them anymore, if they want to get rid of him. Watson does come back, so I guess that's a motivational factor here with Cleveland at home. Line Steven up to 13 at this point. Yeah, I don't think Clayton 2 is going to have a good game here on the road. That's going to be a very tough spot there with arguably the best defense in the NFL. Nothing I'm willing to play because I'm not sure if the points are going to be there. Yeah, maybe lean to the under, but I'm not playing this at all. I'm just passing.
Yeah, no, this is another one where it's just lay the chalk or nothing. As you said, it's like the college all-stars are playing in the NFL today. It's so many names. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. Staying course with another ambiguous one, if you will, and then we'll go back to the big-time games. Rams at Packers. And here we are again. As Guns mentioned, Brett Rippon, I believe, starting today. I'm not sure if Matthew Stafford has been ruled out officially yet. They said game time decision, which, of course, has 2 more hours here. But I don't know. Guns, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, they're listing right. I'm looking at they're listing Rippon as the starter right now, so I'm presuming that Stafford's going to be out with the finger. This one's another tough one here. You got the line here sitting here at -4, -3.5, depending on where you're getting it right now. It's above that key number of 3. I feel weird having my money trusted with the Packers right now. I don't think Love is the guy there for him. He's proved week after week he's not the guy. He kind of looked like how he did in his last year with Nevada. Another one of these toss-up games. I haven't seen Rippon play in professionally, so I don't know how he's going to be. Tough spot for a lot of these rookies today. Going on the road, you have the Rams on the road, you have Arizona on the road, playing these East Coast time zone type of games. Nothing I'm willing to put my hard-earned dollars on. This is just another pass game for me, and I mean, I guess we can get data on Rippon and see how he does.
Yeah, that's really the unknown. I mean, I honestly wanted to take the Rams in this game if Matthew Stafford was playing at least to, a reasonable level of himself, because Green Bay, I think Green Bay is terrible. I think they're actually really poor. Their only wins have come against Chicago, a New Orleans game where they were down 17-0. Derek Carr got hurt and they came back. So they were tracking to get blown out in that game. And I don't know. I just think laying 3.5 here is obviously very difficult with this group. I think Jordan Love has a lot of work to do, and kind of similar to what I was saying about the coaching, Arthur Smith. Quarterbacks like this don't get a lot of time if they don't improve. And I think he's really playing with his job right now. I think if this continues to go downhill the rest of the season, this team finishes, say with 4 wins or less, he might not be back next year. This is pro football. The leash is very short. And the other side of it, we've talked about this as we backed the Rams a few times this year successfully. The Rams are 3-5. I think the Rams are a bye team. First of all, I love Sean McVay. I think he's a great coach. I think he's rebooted this roster very, very well personnel-wise. They have the 3rd youngest roster in the league. So average age is around 25 years old. Obviously highlighted by Puka Nacua just balling out at the wide receiver position. But they have a 1-2 punch at wide receiver. So the point is, here to stay. And their 5 losses, in my opinion, probably the 5 hardest games they had to play all year and will have to play going forward. San Francisco, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Dallas, and a tough game at home against Pittsburgh. So this is definitely a Rams spot. I mean, we would never advise you guys to put money on the Packers here. It's just the unknown of Brett Rippon, and I don't know. But if Stafford was playing and he was healthy, we would be on the Rams officially. So just making the conversation. And staying at 1 o'clock, this is probably the most competitive from a playoff standpoint game at 1 o'clock. Seahawks, Ravens. Big game here. And a lot to talk about. Throw it to the gun for some opening comments.
Yeah, I mean, this thing I think was at 5.5 at one point. Now it's sitting at 6.5 right now. It seems like it's a Baltimore line to me. Baltimore have been playing really well right now. Tough team to not back in these certain positions in this one. Seattle traveling on the road, playing on the East Coast time zone. I'm not, Pete. Carroll prepares his team for any type of situation, so I'm not gonna say that Seattle's in a bad spot here. However, they're playing a very hot team right now. Uh, Really, schedule wise, I think they go into a little bit more divisional games after this with Baltimore. So I think they're going to want to take advantage of these non-conference games and get W's here. And I think Baltimore is just a tough team right now to step in front of. I'm not playing this officially. I think Baltimore does get the W on this one. I just don't know by how much.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough game. Yeah, I don't know. I have a bunch of points on it, so let's discuss it very briefly. I actually think, Guns, what you just said about the divisional games going forward for Baltimore makes it a trap this week. And if you look at last week, we had said this on the broadcast. We thought they were probably going to cover at Arizona because Arizona had not performed well at home against Cincinnati as a corollary within this division. And Baltimore should have covered last week. They should have covered. They were an onside kick away from covering. So the point is, they did what we thought they were going to do last week, and now they just find themselves in a really tough spot. Go back a few weeks ago at Tennessee in London. So you're overseas with a win. Then you come home and you blow out Detroit, another high. Then you go on the road to the West Coast, Arizona, not necessarily the West Coast, but Pacific time, and you play representative football. So you're all over the place. Now you come home against Seattle, the game before you have to play Cleveland and Cincinnati back to back. So in my opinion, this is a lot of travel. I think this team is very hot. I think they have a look-ahead element to back-to-back divisional games coming up. And I think this is where Seattle actually travels reasonably well. Seattle is 2-1 ATS on the road outside of the division. They did win outright at Detroit 37-31, which is looking more and more impressive by the week because Detroit is clearly pretty damn good. And they did hammer the Giants in primetime 24-3. Their only non-cover we had correctly. Cincinnati beat them 17-13 on a -3. This is definitely a towards Seattle here. The only hesitation I have on Seattle is the fact this is the third time they've played this division all year, the AFC North, and they are 0-1-1 ATS. Keep the lines have been damn tight. That game I just mentioned against Cincinnati, Cincinnati covered by 1 point, and last week at home against Cleveland, they did push the 4. I think 6 is very tight, very well graded, but I've said this now for 5 different sports for the last 5.5 years. If the line is a toss line, you want to take the dog because essentially what you're doing is you're free rolling a push. And I think with Seattle here, you're basically free rolling a push. And one final point on this game, the only time this year the Ravens came home off of a domestic cover on the road, key point domestic, because they did win in London, which is a different conversation from travel and energy. They did beat Cincinnati on the road in week 2, 27-24. The following week, they came home outside of the division as a favorite in this range, -7, 7.5, versus Indianapolis and Gardner Minshew. They played their worst game of the season, 22-19 outright loss. This Seattle side is the last side that I looked at that I did not play officially because I do think it's going to be crazy, crazy sharp. Right around 4, 5, or 6, but this is the Seattle side, in my opinion. So, a lot of talk there for an unofficial play. But James Miller III in the chat. I like Seattle in this one. You know it, and I know it. Who's in the chat here? Jabaka, what's going on, brother? Good, better bets. What's up? I got Muhammad. What up, bro? You going to Parks today? Let's fire it off. And Coin in the chat. Soundman, BK, Jared Smith. Sunday Fun Day with Shark and the Gun. Let's have a day. Absolutely. Kelly Vincenzo, what's going on? Baltimore and Seattle both traveled from the West Coast. No pick, just info. True. Although I do think that you have to look at it in the specificity of it. That was a home game for Seattle. Home in their element, going on the road. That's more of a normalized time for them. They're used to coming from West Coast time to East Coast time. Baltimore is not. Baltimore is not used to playing on the West Coast and coming home. So if uncomfortability in that travel, it points way more towards Baltimore. Here we are again. Seattle probably wins the game. Forget it.
I think Kelly brings it up here. If you guys are playing teaser cards on this one, it's probably good to tease up Seattle on this one. You get it past the 7, you get it past the 10, key numbers there. And yeah, I don't think this is going to be a double-digit blowout here with Baltimore. What I was saying is like this could end at Justin Tucker kicking a field goal at the end to win the game. It could be one of those type of situations, and they kind of narrowly escape. But yeah, Shark made some good points. There's a revenge game coming up that I want Baltimore to win so I can fade them next week versus Cleveland, because they beat Cleveland 28-3 on the road. They get them at home. I think Cleveland's going to be a little bit amped up on this one. They got Watson back, so I think it's a better spot next week. But I'm just going to let this one slide this week.
Completely agreed. And Kelly says, why not tease Seattle? Yeah, now, if you're teasing Seattle to a pick 'em, I think you're in a great range there, for sure.
No, you're not. You're teasing them up. You're going. They're +6, so you're going +7, +10. So you actually make double-digit dollars.
Yeah. You see how inexperienced I am with teasers.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, you don't want to tease it down. You should be getting some plus money on that one if you do.
Yeah. Plus 250, pick them. We love it.
Oh yeah.
Going back to 4 o'clock, or did we already hit those? I think we already hit those.
I think we hit all the ones.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go to the late game here. 37 minutes in. Obviously 4 bye weeks and a game in Frankfurt. Shorter card this week, and obviously a lot of moving parts in these games. But 8:20 p.m. NBC Sports, big time football. A rematch of last year's game in Cincinnati, the Damar Hamlin injury game. First regular season game played between these teams, hopefully to completion in Cincinnati in a couple years. Revenge game from the playoffs. Cincinnati did hammer them in Orchard Park in really a lackluster flat spot in January. This is going to be a great game to watch. I think we're going to get off this unders schneid in prime time. And the gun likes the road team, unofficial.
Yeah, I think this is when Buffalo shines. When the lights are brightest, you start to see who the Buffalo Bills really are. They've been playing absolutely flat lately, and I think this is where they have their time to shine. I'll tell you why in a second. We'll give you Buffalo here coming into this game absolutely flat, like I said, since their win over Miami at home in week 4. They have a +1 point differential, -2 net yard average in the last 4 games, 5-3 straight up, 3-5 ATS for the season. Now, where's Cincinnati coming from? Playing exceptional ball as of late. They've won 3 straight games, and they're off a humongous road win last week versus the 49ers, 31-17, despite losing the net yardage battle, -60 net yards. Now you have Buffalo on this one. They played flat, like I said. Jacksonville, they lost 25-20 in London. Terrible spot for them. You had Jacksonville, there for 2 weeks. You had Buffalo just showing up there. It was a bad spot for them to go in there. Then they have to go play Sunday night ball versus the Giants, versus their former OC, a guy that knows the recipes, that know how to cook for Josh Allen. Took advantage of that. Still won the game ugly, 14-9. Then you have New England, divisional road game. Tough spot for them again, 29-25. And then the Patriots were just amped up for that one to go get themselves a W. Then they played Tampa. They should have covered that game. A lot of outliers in that one, which resulted in them not covering. Late touchdown, garbage touchdown, but they were +125 net yards in that game. So they dominated that game from the yardage standpoint, just didn't show into the points. Now they come into this game, all right? One of the weak spots for Buffalo, that is their defensive run game. They give up 5.1 yards per carry to their opponent, 6.1 yards per carry on the road. But fortunately for Buffalo, Cincinnati is a bad rushing offense, so it's not going to really affect them. They only average 79 yards per game, 29th in the NFL, 3.7 yards per carry, 24th in the NFL. And that's a little bit more predicated on the fact that Cincinnati, quite frankly, doesn't have a good offensive line. And then we got Cincinnati coming off a road win versus San Francisco. We've talked about this trend before. Historically, teams that play the 49ers, the next week, they fall flat. They are 2-20 straight up in the next game after playing the 49ers. That is quite a remarkable task for a lot of these teams. That tells you how good the 49ers are. They beat you up and they make you earn every single victory. I think this is a revenge spot as well for Buffalo after that home playoff loss last season, 27-10 in Buffalo. And now you got them going on the road, plus a short dog in this spot. I think Buffalo shows up here when the lights are brightest versus the Cincinnati team. There's going to be a ton of motivation in this one. And when they play a good team, you see what they did against Miami, absolutely boat race them. And I think they're going to do it here as well versus the Bengals in the flattest of flat spots for them after the 49er victory. Give me Buffalo here, not only +2.5 for 2 units, sprinkle a little bit on the money line for a half a unit as well. So give me both of those all day long.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We had talked about this early week. I think this is definitely the correct side of this game. We talked about it last week when you backed them against Tampa Bay. Remember on Thursday Night Football, I said, I think they have another stinker in them because this is just how they cluster against these bad teams. And Buffalo, more than any other team in the sport, and I'm thinking about it right now, I think they are the top team in the sport that does play down to their competition, sort of like an NBA team. They just don't take the game seriously. That's not usually a thing in pro football. Usually it's very much, you get one game a week, teams show up. Buffalo just coasts games. And I think look at their personnel. It never makes sense because it is actually unprofessional. You should be showing up every week. I don't care who the opponent is. But from the standpoint of the explosiveness, it does make sense because this team has one of the top 3 explosive offenses in the league. I would say Josh Allen is the top gunslinging quarterback in contemporary football. The guy can throw the ball like 80 yards. I think he can throw the football like 75 miles an hour probably. I mean, and with that type of natural ability, you kind of have a subconscious complacency a little bit because you can turn it on at any point in time. And you don't necessarily have to play 60 minutes to just demolish. But the key point is when they do play bigger games like this, it's where you get their best product. And if you go through their road efficiency this year, I think you're seeing transparency just situationally. They are 0-2 straight up and 0-2 ATS in the division. Week 1 loss Monday Night Football at the Jets, 22-16. Key point there, Jets defense great. Also Aaron Rodgers injured. Buffalo not taking the game seriously. Makes complete sense. And Week 7 at New England, 29-25. Lost. Why? New England is not very good this year. So Buffalo clearly didn't take the spot seriously. But their bigger games this year before that, only road game outside of division this year, they did hammer Washington. And go back to last year. There was a similar sample last year that we've talked about a few times on the show. Go back to the middle of last year in the season. They had a non-cover at home against Green Bay. They lost on the road at the Jets. They lost at home to Minnesota. They did not cover a game against Cleveland, and they did not cover a game against Detroit. So they went 0-5 ATS over a 5-game sample. And then they proceeded to go 1, 2, 3, 4-1 ATS in the next 5. So the point is, this is where you want to start to buy Buffalo. As Guns mentioned, Cincinnati off of the San Francisco game. That 31-17 was a little bit deceiving. That was a tighter game than the final result. They did compete. It was physical. This is where the Bills should get going tonight. And I think the over is also a very, very good look. Obviously, the Bills the last few weeks with this explosive offense have done effectively nothing. Go back through the sample in London, 20 points. One of the worst football games we saw all year against the Giants. 14-9, 0 points in the first 3 quarters. At New England, 25 points. Very lackluster, scored some late. And last week, 24 points against Tampa Bay. They're due to explode. This is going to be a big time game. We are so overdue for a primetime game that's going to be high scoring, back and forth, and entertaining. So I think you're looking at a Buffalo side here and an over tonight. Let's talk about Monday Night Football very briefly, and because we're not doing a show tomorrow. Chargers at the Jets, sitting here at -3.5 tomorrow night, MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey. Conversation to be had. Guns picks. Any comments?
Yeah, this is something I'm going to look at a little bit later on. You have the Jets defense, I guess. They're playing a Chargers team that every time I see the Chargers, I always see what's the line? 2.5, 3? What are we looking at here? with them. I mean, this is one of those situations that I really want to take the Jets on this one. I haven't got there on paper. I'm not even sure if I even have an exceptional look in here. It's really hard to trust both teams. I mean, which one are you going to pick? You're going to pick Herbert? Or you're going to pick Zach Wilson in these spots? Both these teams kind of always skate around covers altogether. You have the Jets coming off that, emotional win versus the Giants, the ownership of the stadium, so to speak. And then you got the Chargers that I've just never it's never bode well to put my money on the Chargers. I would probably lean towards the dog here. You're getting 3.5, so I think you're getting over that key number there. But taking -3.5 with the Chargers right now is just something I would never want to do. So I probably lean on the Jets, but nothing official from me on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Jets are probably the side. I'm looking at it right now. The Jets have been very good at home, actually.
Yep.
And this is with Zach Wilson. So this is not, this is not contaminated. This is the same team. Week 1, win against Buffalo 22-16. Week 4, crucial point here as well. Both primetime games against Kansas City as a dog in this particular division. 23-20 cover, plus 8.5. And they did cover and beat Philly as well. This team the defense is incredible. And I think these corollaries are very, very specific. When you're looking at this team is, they're 3-1 ATS at home. And their only non-cover was because of a safety in the very end of the game against the Patriots to lose 15-10. And this team is 2-0 ATS at home in prime time. And they're 1-0 against this division as a dog. And you look at the Chargers. The Chargers are kind of in a funky spot. They played the Chiefs. They played Dallas. This is a very funky spot, actually.
Yeah.
They played Dallas, real tight game against Dallas. Then they played a tight game against Kansas City, 31-17, deceiving scoreline there. That was a lot tighter than 31-17. Then they blew out the Bears. So they played 3 big games in a row. Didn't get a lot of results, but they did play 3 big games in a row. And now they got to go on the road to the Jets and then come home and play the Lions next week. That's a big game for them. So this is a trap game. This is where the Jets function well. Again, getting over 3.5 is probably the side. I think we're talking ourselves onto the Jets as we see.
I think so too. Kelly actually brought it up a good trend if you want to look at overs and unders. When the Monday Night Football road team is favored 17-1 to the under, if you like trends on that one, and that kind of fits in the mold of primetime unders. So yeah, maybe a look on the if the Jets are going to actually cover this spread or win this game, I would say it's probably going to be a little bit low scoring. That's the type of game they want to play. And then you got a pass defense that really sucks for the Chargers. So maybe Zach Wilson actually puts up some yards in this game, and the motivation on the Jets side at home. Yeah, I may be talking myself into the Jets as we're talking this out right now, especially plus 3.5. It's a great number.
Yeah, I mean, if you go through the Jets, they've honestly been competitive all year. They've really only had one bad game at Dallas in week 2. Week 1, beat the Bills. Week 3, toss line against the Patriots. Week 4, cover against the Chiefs. Week 5, 10-point win in Denver. I mean, I don't care if this is Russell Wilson and this Denver team. That's still a tough travel point for this team theoretically. Particularly off of a cover the previous week against Kansas City. There's even better stuff. So they're also 2-0 ATS in this division with the road cover at Denver. And then you come home off the win and you beat Philly. So this is like no letdown whatsoever. You know, their worst effort, to be perfectly honest, was last week against the Giants as a road favorite. They really kind of luck boxed that cover late. So I think they're actually coming off of back to a certain degree in terms of effort-wise and box score dispersion. So you get a buy low. The team plays great against this division. They play great in prime time at home. They play great as a dog. And the Chargers don't function well as a favorite on the road outside the division. Yeah, Jets are definitely the side for sure.
Yep.
Love it. 50 minutes in the books. Week 9, Circa Millions, the show. Sunday, November 5th, 2023. The Shark in the Gun. Sharky Waters Nation, 9 words of lifestyle. Ride the way we're down the water. 3 top plays from myself. Washington +3. New Orleans, we got this at 7 early week. That's why you follow on Twitter and notifications on. I post these when I play them, anticipating line moves. That's why you don't always wait until Sunday morning to bet football. That is 8.5 or 9.5 now. We expect a 10+ win anyway, so we're not talking you guys off the new line. And Houston -2.5. All boxes checked. The gun alignment on Houston -2.5. Giants on the road in Vegas +2. Philly, big-time football in Philadelphia this afternoon against the Cowboys -3, and a late-night Sunday Night Football special, Buffalo +2.5. 0-4 ATS last 4. Big-time game, big-time stuff. Will be a hell of a watch, and we appreciate you guys watching us in the most competitive marketplace in sports media, which is NFL content. We'd love to bring you the hype, the analysis, the conversation, and the top picks. It is the Shark and the Gun. It is Sunday, Week 10. Guns picks, close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, I see 40 to 50 you beautiful bastards watching us on YouTube. Please, if you haven't yet, hit the like button into this video so we can stay in the algorithm and share this beautiful knowledge every single week. And also subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell so we know every time we go live. Listen, we're going to be back on Thursday to talk a little TNF. And, of course, doing the regular Shark of the Gun on the Friday. And all the shows that are coming across this channel, including the NBA Payday show with the Shark. Go check that out as well. So a lot of content coming on this channel. So make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for everybody that's joining. Let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the board. Let's just have ourselves a damn Sunday. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang.